Imagine a child who, at just 16 years old, becomes the subject of movies because of what he has done. He committed crimes in such a professional way that some of them still remain unsolved. He even recorded everything he did, from beginning to end. And the name of this genius child is Gerald Daniel Blanchard. Contrary to his innocent genius child look, during his high school years, he started stealing products from stores and making money by returning them to the same stores with realistic-looking fake receipts. And this genius kid had a strange habit. No one knows why he did it, but he recorded everything he did with the cameras he stole. Sometimes he would hand the camera to someone, have them record him, walk into the store, take the product, and simply walk straight out. You may not believe it, but that was really how it was. Moreover, the money he stole was not in such small amounts. As you can understand, he had turned stealing into a profession. Even though he was only 16, the money he had reached $100,000. Meanwhile, with the money he earned by stealing, he even hired a lawyer and bought his mother a house. He also managed to trick his mother with the lie, "I bought it together with my friends." In this way, he became both a devoted son and a thief. There could only be one reason why he could commit all these crimes so easily. In my opinion, it was the juvenile appearance that came with his age. Because, like a ghost, he would enter stores without attracting attention, steal products, and as if that were not enough, record what he did with the cameras he stole, and leave without anyone noticing. Maybe you can do something like this once, but only 1 or 2 times. Otherwise, you get caught, right? This innocent-faced criminal genius child, with his juvenile appearance, robbed tons of stores without getting caught. But one Christmas, when he rented a truck and tried to empty almost an entire store, he was caught by the police. However, he would not receive the punishment he deserved as we expected, because his teacher, whom he saw as a father, stood surety for him in court and ensured that he was paroled a few months later. Thus, he obtained a great opportunity to commit bigger robberies. Now 21 years old, in April 1993, Gerald poured 40 liters of gasoline on his friend's car and set it on fire so that his friend could collect insurance money. And then, reeking of gasoline, he would call the police to report it. Naturally, the police suspected our criminal mastermind and took him into custody. In fact, it was interesting that someone who had earned tons of money by stealing at the age of 15 or 16 would make such stupid mistakes. But Gerald was as stupid as he was smart. Anyway, let's get back to our topic. Gerald, who was locked in the interrogation room at the police station, climbed up into the suspended ceiling and hid there, just as the officer's shift was ending. After his statement was taken, after a long while, when one of the officers who had taken his statement came back into the interrogation room and could not see Gerald, he panicked and even called in the SWAT teams to start searching. After a few hours had passed, Gerald jumped down from the ceiling where he was hiding, and instead of running straight away, he found the desk of the detective who had interrogated him, took the family photo from the desk, drew a smiley face on a bullet he found in the drawer, left it on the detective's desk, and then escaped. That's what a weirdo he was. However, after he escaped, he did not go somewhere no one could ever find him, but to his mother's house, and that was the problem. Right after making such a clever move, he would make such stupid decisions and ruin everything. The detectives, thinking like us, assumed that someone who escaped from the station and even mocked them would not be stupid enough to go to his mother's house. But later, when teams raided his mother's house at dawn, he was caught again. But this time, he would be taken not to the town station, but to the Central Police Station. As you can understand, things had gotten even worse. According to police procedure, the officer first had to get out of the vehicle and inform inside that he had brought in a suspect. But when the officer got out of the vehicle, Gerald, who was both stupid and smart, pulled his handcuffed hands from behind to the front, got into the driver's seat of the police car, with the keys still in the ignition, and started to escape by stealing the police car. However, now that he was 21, he would not get away with a simple sentence. Moreover, since he had escaped from the police twice, his criminal record had grown significantly. Gerald Daniel was sentenced to 7 years in prison, but with good behavior reduction. He was deported after 4 years in 1997, sent back to his home country, Canada, and was banned from entering the United States of America for 5 years. Sent back to where he was born, 25-year-old Gerald Daniel tricked the customs officers with the lie, "I don't have money for the bus," and got $10. Then instead of taking the bus, he bought himself a camera for $9. He couldn't sit still. And by paying 10 cents to photocopy the receipt of this camera, he created new receipts for his return trick and also started stealing cameras. He made new friends, expanded his operations, and would rent himself a house, buy a car, and other such luxury items. In one of these luxury environments, he met the daughter of a respected German businessman, and they got married in a short time. Gerald arranged a European tour with his new family. In fact, his aim was not to have fun with his happy new family, but to steal the Sisi diamond, which was used by Empress Elizabeth of Austria and decorated with diamonds and pearls at a very special exhibition held at the Sisi Museum in Vienna, the capital of Austria. Being both a genius and an idiot, Gerald used his father-in-law's respected position in the business world to make a special request to the palace officials, and the exhibition that would open the next day was opened for Gerald and his family that very day. At their special request, they would be able to see that valuable jewel earlier with his new family. Although Gerald seemed to listen carefully to what the guide was saying, in his mind, he was thinking about the security system of the display case and how he would bypass it. He examined the positions of the motion sensors in the corners, the types of screws on the glass display case, the huge windows of the high-ceilinged room, and the thick curtains. Then, when the guide moved on to the next room, he took out his vlog camera and quickly filmed the room where the precious jewel was displayed, and without anyone noticing. He slightly loosened the screw heads of the alarm mechanism with a mini screwdriver so that it would not malfunction. Then, within seconds, and without attracting attention, he opened the lock of one of the room's windows and left it slightly ajar, and after taking care of these, he returned to his new family. Now the first stage of the plan was complete. After this, he would move on to the second stage of the plan. But now a simple plan like unscrewing bolts would not work, because what he was going to steal was no longer a simple product. For this reason, he had a crazy plan that resembled a full-blown action movie. In the second stage of this crazy plan, he buys a fake star-shaped hairpin identical to the jewel on display from the palace's gift shop. In the evening, when the small plane of a German pilot he had arranged beforehand flew over the palace in Vienna. He parachuted down onto the roof of the palace. Without anyone noticing, he took a sturdy rope out of his bag and slipped inside through the window he had left open during the day, slowly making his way to the exhibition room at a speed that would not trigger the motion sensors. When he reached the exhibition room, after unscrewing the loosened screws with a small knife, he lifted the glass case without setting off the alarm and swapped the original jewel with the fake star hairpin he had bought that morning. Thus, since the weight sensor did not notice the change, the alarm did not go off. In this way, Gerald managed to steal Sisi's Star, which he admired, with a flawless operation, like a movie scene. The story I have told is actually the version we heard from Gerald himself. In reality, Sisi's Star was stolen. And even when the exhibition opened, it went unnoticed for days. However, as days passed and the situation was understood, the police and the government were in an uproar. But no one could figure out how it had been stolen. After the $100 million heist, he could have lived whatever life he wanted. But he had no intention of stopping. Because theft was an addiction, or a pleasure for him. Even though he was out of sight for a while after this incident, he would not be able to stay away from crime for long. So he left the wife he supposedly loved and went back to his old lifestyle. Since he was banned from entering the USA, he started looking for new excitement again in Canada and other countries. Sorry, this was not a search for excitement, just a pathological desire to commit crime. In 2001, Gerald saw the Alberta Treasury Bank, which was under construction in Edmonton, Canada, and thinking its security is weak, saw it as a suitable target for a robbery plan. Even if I get tired of telling it, it was as if this guy really needed a lot of money. Now he was going to rob a bank as well, in the first steps of the plan. He would rent a room in the building across the street, and for weeks, go to the construction site disguised as a worker, to examine the surroundings. Then he would find or make the same locks. In this way, he would place a listening device and a camera in the ATM room and monitor the bank 24/7. After all, even though he thought security was weak, he was going to rob a bank. First, he would study his prey, that is, the bank. Then he would use all the details he had learned to make an almost perfect plan. And Gerald's plan was as follows. The day before the bank opened, once the ATMs had been filled with cash, he would enter at night through the ventilation shaft whose screws he had loosened on the roof, thanks to the sensors whose settings he had previously tampered with. He would open the ATMs within a few minutes, without triggering the alarm, take more than $500,000 in cash, and then leave after replacing the camera footage with copies. Thus, when the police arrived and saw that the doors, windows, and glass were intact, they would not take the situation seriously, assume it was a system error, and leave. But this time, things did not go as perfectly as he had planned, because a single tiny clue would ruin everything. This tiny clue was actually the license plate of the rental car he had parked in the lot in the morning. If that license plate had not been recorded by the night security, he would have taken tons of money without leaving a trace. In fact, instead of getting involved in such things, living in luxury would have been much better for him. But luckily, he could not hold back his urge to steal. Anyway, let's get back to our topic. When Gerald learned from the listening devices that his license plate had come up, he started calling the police from hidden numbers, saying things like, "I was also in on the robbery. We planned it with the workers. They kicked me out of the crew." And by sprinkling in only details that the police knew, he tried to derail the investigation and increase the number of suspects, taking advantage of this absurd mess. Gerald continued his bank and ATM robberies in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and Edmonton, while at the same time constantly producing new fake IDs, driver's licenses, and passports, and disguising himself as different people with wigs, beards, and lenses. At the same time, he kept a burglary bag at home full of night vision cameras, long-range receivers, police radio scanners, ropes, and hooks. He was now committing robberies for both money and adrenaline, sneaking into major sporting events and among celebrities with fake press cards and living a luxurious life. As you can understand, he was both feeding his pathological urge to steal and earning more money than he could spend in his lifetime. In other words, he was making money with the robbery business. He had turned into a profession. For Gerald, whose story was unbelievable and a bit like a fantastic movie, the end was near. Because when the detectives realized he was at a bank 100 kilometers away, and that they would not be able to reach the boss, it was time to push the button. Orders came from higher-ups, and now they would do whatever it took to arrest this man, who slipped into every bank like a mouse. Clearly, they would not be able to reach the boss. All email records, all conversations, and messages had been examined, and the addresses of all accomplices he had contacted within Canada's borders had been found. All that remained was to find Gerald. And when they conducted signal scanning around the newly opening bank branch where he was, the location of his house was also determined. In the early hours of the morning on January 23, 2007, a 12-man SWAT team sprang into action in Vancouver. And by carrying out the operation simultaneously, both Gerald and the 10-plus people who had committed crimes with him on Canadian soil were captured in raids carried out at the same time. The evidence seized by the police was like a treasure chest. When Gerald's houses and warehouses were searched, a full 10 pallets of material were collected. Among them were more than 60,000 documents, fake IDs, passports, bank documents, large amounts of cash in different currencies, smoke bombs, several weapons, more than 300 electronic devices, card cloning machines, card readers, all kinds of cameras and listening devices, and many more electronic tools and equipment. In addition, a secret room was found during the search of his luxury apartment in Vancouver. In this room, hidden behind a wall panel, burglary equipment was neatly arranged on shelves. The list and documents of all the fake IDs Gerald had used were also filed there. It was practically a crime museum. Gerald would initially be brought to court on 41 separate charges. The list was quite long. with theft, forgery, fraud, possession of forgery tools, and more. Because this time the circumstances were different. The police had seized everything, even the 120 video and audio tapes containing Gerald's own vlogs. In short, he now knew that whether he ran or hid, he would be caught. In addition, perhaps for the first time, he felt, deep inside, "Enough, I'm tired." Because interestingly, this time he had no intention of running. In fact, when one of his accomplices, Angela, told everything, he seemed to realize that it was time for him to talk as well. The Canadian court sentenced Gerald to approximately 168 years. But this crazy genius had one more card to play. He made the detectives an offer, and the deal was this. If I explain in detail all the security vulnerabilities I've found and exploited throughout my life, and after returning all the money I stole from the banks, I also give you Sisi Star, how much will my sentence be reduced? He asked. When the detectives heard that he had never committed a violent crime, that since he would reveal all his methods, they could not be repeated by others, and most importantly, that they would obtain Sisi's jewel, which would put them in a terrific diplomatic position. Things suddenly took a strange turn. It would echo throughout the world's media that the ones who had found this priceless jewel were detectives working in a small town in Canada. And this was a tremendous opportunity for both their egos and their careers. Thus began a long confession process about the theft of the jewel. Gerald said, "I really did steal it by jumping with a parachute." He also explained how he had entered dozens of banks and said that he had hidden Sisi's jewel in his grandmother's basement. And indeed, Sisi's jewel was there for more than a month. Gerald recounted everything he had done to the police in detail. It was as if a magician were revealing the secrets of all his tricks. The technical information he provided was so effective that the detectives combined it all and prepared an 8-hour conference presentation for the banking sector and law enforcement. On November 7th, 2007, at the Manitoba Provincial Court, the case against Gerald Blanchard was concluded. In return for all his friends being released, Gerald accepted 16 separate charges and, under the agreement, received a tremendous reduction and was sentenced to only 8 years in prison. Gerald's lawyer also read a statement from his client. "My client is very pleased that the great lie he has lived with for years has finally come to an end. He thanks the men and women of the Winnipeg Police Department for making this possible." So, was he truly remorseful? I don't know, but he was one of the world's strangest and best thieves. Finally, he was released on parole after serving 5 years with good behavior. When he got out, he set his mind on living a clean life and started working as a security consultant. But for some reason, he became interested in exotic animals and then started doing photography as well. But brace yourself. In 2017, he was caught trying to steal a PlayStation from a Best Buy store under the name Rick White. However, after this small theft, he continued his life without receiving a major sentence. That's all from me for today. If you liked the story of Gerald Daniel, like the video, and definitely share your thoughts with me in the comments. That way, we can build a real connection. See you in the next video.